For much of the last decade, TV has been caught between two forces: control and scale. Broadcasters and content owners build destinations designed to own the audience, while platforms like YouTube train viewers to watch television elsewhere. VEVO sits right at the center of that shift. Known for music videos, it operates at global scale across YouTube, connected TV platforms, and fast environments, working inside those ecosystems rather than trying to replace them. Today, I'm joined by Richard Brant, Senior Director of Advanced TV Strategy and Partnerships at VEVO, to talk about how that model actually works, what it means for music, for TV, and for where growth really comes from now. Richard, welcome to Media Unscripted.
Well, thanks for having me, Annie. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Let's start with the broader context. Over the last decade, alongside broadcasters and streamers-owned TV platforms, open video environments like YouTube have become places where television is actually watched, including on the biggest screen at home. And let's not start early on in our discussion. The conversation is YouTube TV, but we'll do it later. But when did VEVO recognize that YouTube had shifted from being a discovery platform, discovery layer, to a primary television environment? And what changed strategically once it was treated as a place where TV actually happens rather than a funnel to somewhere else?
Yeah, I think if you look at why VEVO exists is kind of the most important question there. And it really exists off the disruption of digital to the music industry, since the turn of the century. If you think about all the things that happen with actual recorded music, from physical to then digital, all the piracy that was going on there.
Yes.
Ultimately, it was it was a shift to following what the listener wanted and what the fan wanted, and hence why all the labels collaborated with the likes of Spotify and so on like that. And then the mantra and the ethos that was born out of where VEVO came from was, we're not really a consumer-facing brand. We're really like the pipes by which our artists get their content out to their fans, and really, our focus is primarily on making that happen. The maximizing the commercial and promotional value of that content effectively on behalf of those artists. So, the transition to that was saying, well, look, this is happening. This has happened to the music industry. Ultimately, if we're going to put content out there, we need to make it as accessible as possible. Therefore, that kind of, obviously there's always decisions to kind of make those kind of moves, particularly, into the YouTube environment. But
yeah,
I've been there over 15 years now, and ultimately is a very big service for us in kind of reaching fans globally very quickly. And I think that kind of mantra is that kind of dawning of the disruption of digital has landed with the rest of the landscape when it comes to video and broadcasting, in that, there is so much choice out there. And ultimately the only way to make your content, be consumed and be, part of the fight for attention, is to be in the environments that those viewers are going to watch it, and, make sure that they know your brand, know your content, so that you can take them on a journey with you.
Yeah, so making that shift meant committing to operating inside an open system where you don't control the interface, I suspect, not as much as maybe some owned platforms would, the data or the rules in the same way. So what were the biggest risks of that decisions internally for VEVO and externally in how partners and advertisers and brands perceived the shift and the business?
So I think it always comes down to there's a balance, and the opportunity cost and the risk of that in that scenario, with a lot of decisions made in any business. But I think, when it comes to this sort of scenario, you're thinking really like going into a scenario where, yes, you're going to compromise a few things, but by not doing that, are you going to become less relevant? And actually relevancy right now is probably of more paramount than anything, because there's going to be scenarios where, we talk about the likes of the, ITVs and Channel 4s and Skies all readily distributing on YouTube now. And the reality is, it's because they need to continue to have that conversation with the audience. And
Yes.
it's not that their owned and operating platforms aren't still doing a massive job, and they really are. But there is a generation that they need to still have a conversation with and draw them potentially in, or just keep them where they are and still have that conversation with them with the content that they're trying to
Yeah, it's almost like mentally deciding that there are different. We moved on. There are different things that that actually drive our business, rather than the sort of holding on to the owned, operated, and the control. You can control, I guess, different things now.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, it is a compromise, but then there is opportunity in that compromise too, because even though we work in environments that aren't necessarily our own, we do get data in terms of the viewing behaviors and the way that we can kind of work around what we have in that scenario too, like whether we work with third-party targeting companies like the likes of Experian, and kind of draw all these different elements together using one kind of functional part that works across the lot of them. So there is compromise, but there's also thankfully clever enough people to start thinking about how this world works in a kind of fragmented way.
Yeah.
It's not ideal, but it is the way of the world. Life has become fragmented, and we have to adapt as publishers as a result of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a huge lesson. I feel that we are in this moment where loads of broadcasters and content owners should really learn from companies like VEVO, because you moved away from the owned, operated platforms super early. So hats off to you. That's why I'm such a big fan. But what's striking is that this sounds definitely less like a distribution decision and more like a sort of fundamental way of thinking about where television and audience now live.
I mean, there's considerations on everything, but I think that mantra of what VEVO does, and maybe that's something that broadcasters or publishers in general are trying to come to terms with, is if you look at the fact that again, we're not a consumer facing brand necessarily. Our artists are the consumer facing brand.
Good point.
And if you ultimately think about what they are trying to do, is they are trying to get their pieces of content out to the world, and ultimately they're trying to encourage the rest of their fans to engage in more of their content, if you know what I mean. So their music and so on like that. And ultimately the music video is a way by which it's an art form. It's to get their fans to understand them a little bit more, understand the song and the meaning of the song, and ultimately it should engage them to explore more, if you know what I mean, from that point of view.
Yeah, so what did VEVO learn about audience behavior when it stopped trying to pull viewers into owned destination? What are the differences?
I think when you work with a medium like music, which in itself is quite unique, music video, is that one, it's complete universal. So even if you don't like Beyonce, you might like Harry Styles, or you might like Bowie or something like that. But the reality is that the music videos all exist in this ecosystem, and because we reach 21 billion impressions every month across the globe, that's not really that doesn't really change. It's already really big, if you know what I mean, in terms of the impressions that we have. But what we do see, because we work in environments like YouTube, of course, is the kind of how like screens have shifted over time, and how you kind of if you look back maybe 10 years, you've got the kind of big wedge of desktop in the middle, where people are watching the likes of our content on desktop, kind of a big tranche of mobile as well, and this kind of small slither of connected TV down the bottom in terms of the way that people are consuming. And over time, it's actually quite a nice graph. I should have brought it. Maybe I can. But
it's happy to share it later with our audience.
But ultimately, you just got this scenario where the desktop really starts to thin out to this real kind of slither in the middle. mobile growing and kind of staying where it is, and then this connected TV, the amount of people watching, effectively YouTube or others on the TV screen, just growing to, well, between 30-40% now, in terms of what we're seeing. And it's become, that scenario where over time, just the ability to actually, IP delivered content and so on like that, and quality of it has really started to, come to fruition in that way, and making it fully accessible in the way that you as a viewer want to consume that content. So you get that real, because it's so big and because it's such a universal piece of content, that you really see how people are, actually engaging with it in that way.
So with this all change, and it's actually, yes, I would love to see this graph. If you could share, we'll edit it in, because it almost, those zipper graphs as they move over time, the sort of animation, that would be nice just to see how it's sort of expanding and evolves to where we are. It's such a lesson to all other content owners as well. But how this shift changed where you choose to invest time, effort, and commercial focus, and just importantly, where you choose not to, because now you are outside of your own environment.
So when you say that, are you referring to?
Because it's not the product development. Normally you just want to attract audiences, the dwell time. Obviously, you want to understand all the analytics. Here you in some ways you let go, or one lets go of the sort of classic measurement, and the focus were to derive value from the platform in order to conserve audiences. This is almost like, I'm oversimplifying, but it's almost like being catered for. You go to the ready environment, you let go of this, but then where do you invest time and effort instead? Where is the commercial focus?
So I think, obviously there's compromise in what we do, because ultimately we're working in environments that are, full of content, and I think that you sort of alluded to it a little bit earlier in terms of the kind of fragmentation, operational fragmentation, so on like that comes with it. But it's also the outside perception of what this content is, because obviously, I think gradually over the last few years it's changed quite a bit, but YouTube was always seen as YouTube, not what kind of content on YouTube. And then suddenly you spend, well, and what VEVO's had to do for the majority of its existence, explain why, say, Beyonce's official music video is worth more than a cover version of Beyonce in a bedroom within the same environment.
Gosh.
So I think what we have to do from our point of view is spend most of our time explaining the nuances of YouTube. For example, obviously we are off YouTube as well in the likes of Samsung, but within this environment, it's a kind of a pure, this is almost like the kind of challenging of what marketing has become as well, because we have to explain, why should you buy this type of YouTube over this type of YouTube in this scenario? So I'd say, and Channel 4 will have this issue, and ITV will have this issue, and any other, publisher, dipping their toe into the YouTube environment, is that their content has not changed. It was still broadcast when it was over there, and it's still broadcast when it's in YouTube environment. But because it's in the YouTube environment, suddenly from an outside perception, it's now YouTube. So therefore it has to be, bought by YouTube rules. So we've done lots of research, particularly around this, trying to dispel these myths and explain why ultimately, investing in this type of content is important for this type of campaign, for example, branding and credibility and association and so on like that. And we've seen for the likes of, the way that our content, and this goes for the likes of Sky or ITV, consumed on a TV screen is a TV experience. It's a lean back. I've gone specifically to find this piece of content, and I'm sat there watching it on my TV screen. It still come from this, of TV standard content or engagement.
And it goes on my big screen as well.
Exactly that. So there is no difference apart from the way it got there in terms of that scenario. So there is this, a lot of our efforts are effectively to, yes, we're in this environment, but we are using this environment to distribute. We are not the environment that we're in effectively in that scenario. So that means doing these research around kind of attention and seeing how many people are in a room, sharing this experience. I mean, we got amplified intelligence to put a panel in houses in the UK, cameras on TVs and so on like that to actually see the attention, how many people in the room. And compare it against different types of content as well, and we saw kind of 40% difference in attention of kind of high premium made for TV content versus more kind of medium to kind of long tail video. So that's really important, and also kind of we have to show the difference in terms of what we can reach as well, because otherwise we just get lumped in with YouTube as well. So we've done lots with different companies from the likes of Barb in the UK, for example, or Audience Project, which is kind of international, well, a bit more international, and Nielsen, about effectively just measuring our content so that people can see us as a publisher rather than a publisher that is on YouTube, if you know what I mean. So. Yeah. Or even Samsung. So the ability to dedupe our reach curves across these platforms, which kind of one of the ways around all this fragmentation, is something that we can do with the likes of Audience Project, and we can even dedupe us versus YouTube. So a user of Audience Project can now see VEVO as a publisher, and ultimately us, versus Netflix or Disney or even YouTube itself. Because you're buying that content, you're not buying that content on that platform, if you know what I mean. So these are the kind of things that actually, look, going back to the principle of why we exist, we are there to get this content out to fans as quickly as possible and maximize that promotional value and commercial value. But the way to do that is to lean into viewer behavior, but ultimately we need to also explain what our relevance is to a buyer who is buying us from an advertising point of view versus the rest of their plan, because it's really important to kind of single that out.
It's such a huge shift, and it sounds like you're almost creating a market and educating the market, but then letting go of the ownership and control into owning relevance is, I guess, the price worth paying for. But it's still, I feel it was such a difficult shift for many legacy organizations to make. So let's see what 2026 will bring. But I feel that it would be great to have those lessons from you, perhaps more right in the open, musical or not.
We do. I mean, we're part of those. In the UK, we're obviously we have conversations with the likes of EGTA in Europe as well. So like Thinkbox, and we're a member of Thinkbox, and we work with Bob. For us, it's really we've worked in this environment for a long time. We understand the turmoil they are going through in terms of kind of that shift over, but it's a necessary shift over because you don't want to be in a scenario where you're just hoping people will turn up to your platform in order to survive, because there is too much content out there. And it's like, it doesn't matter how good your content is, if someone is finding it easier just to watch back to back stuff in a bedroom or something like that, in terms of people doing cover versions or things like that, it's important to kind of be in those environments so that you can kind of continue to have that conversation with you.
Absolutely. But some more reluctant organizations or content owners, TV content owners, might look at music and still being in denial about the change and say, oh, but music video behaves very differently from most TV content. What is it about the format that makes it particularly suited for connected TV and fast environments? Or maybe there is no difference.
Yeah, so it's always fun. I had this conversation recently. No, it wasn't. It was, but it's just, you kind of, people will go, oh, well, it's interesting, the music video on TV, is it that kind of format? It's like, well, music video was made for TV, and the music video as a format is older than two of the broadcasters in the UK. So it's it came out in
Really?
81. Yeah, came out in 81, and Channel 4 was 84, and I think Sky was around about 89. So it's kind of, it's older than most broadcasters as a format on TV.
It's very true. It's definitely older than us, because
Yeah,
I
older than
remember
me. Yeah.
all those, Top of the Pops and all that. That's what it's.
Launched with the Buggles in 81 in the US on MTV. So,
Okay. Well, yeah, MTV, of
yeah.
course.
So you've got a scenario here where it's always lived in this environment. But I suppose the versatility of it is really that, unlike most kind of traditional TV, it is short form artwork watched in long form, because you will have back to back version. Like, someone wants to watch a Beyonce video. I don't know, I'm stuck on Beyonce today. Wants to watch a Beyonce video. They'll probably go on and watch another Beyonce video, and then they'll probably go on to watch someone like Beyonce as well in another video. So it's in itself, it's kind of cultural expression, because it's really, it resonates with people. There's kind of there's a very passionate viewers for this content, because they obviously love the artist they're watching. But it's also kind of, it will take people on a journey, because they'll go from one story to another story to another story, because that's what they are. They're little stories about what the songs are, and ultimately has always been
And
something scheduled
and beautifully visually created. I mean,
Yeah.
like, that's why I love ads. Not necessarily too many ads on TV,
Yeah.
but ads is a creation.
Yeah.
You have to tell a story in a few seconds. It's
Yeah.
a masterpiece. So yeah, I completely get it.
Yeah, sorry, going back to your question, I suppose. Yeah, it is me. I can understand the kind of reticence from a lot of the broadcasters about kind of long form and being in that environment. But I think it's like, ultimately, that is how people are watching long form. There's plenty of kind of documentaries. This might well even be on YouTube at some point. So people are watching long form content on the screen there, on a potential TV screen, via YouTube, but it's engaging content. And it's just because it's gone through a different platform doesn't make it any different. Yes, there are slight differences in the way ad formats turn up and so on like that. That could change over time as well.
Yeah.
But not being there is probably more dangerous, I think, at this point, because there is, you look at Channel 4, where they talk about cannibalized, that actually they're not cannibalizing, they're actually just finding viewers they don't have.
Exactly.
And therefore, it's, yes, there is a compromise on, you're ultimately going to have to spend, give some of that money away, because you're being hosted on a platform. But you as a sales team should be driving why it's more worth spending with them as well. So drive your yields in terms of your CPMs, because even from a philosophical point of view, it's important that this content exists in the future as well. It needs to have the funding to still exist, and therefore, and the credibility and quality and attention that comes with it is worth paying for, because you choose to be around Channel 4 or ITV, and you know what you're going to get. If you go into a YouTube environment, you could get some, but you don't know, sort of thing. You don't. So having that ability to kind of really control, particularly in a world where generative AI and so on like that, and misinformation is out there with it in all environments now, having absolute certainty of what you've bought and what you're associated with is going to become even more important. So I think that ability to drive that story is even more important right now.
Yeah, that's so true. I haven't thought about it. Is the sort of storytelling, or sort of narrative context, maybe it's not there, but then you've got the reliable emotional connection, environment, attention, and brand safety. If it's Beyonce, you know what you're getting, unless it's the cover. So
well, exactly, and within our network, within Channel 4, within ITV, I mean, it's all regulated over in editorial oversight, and within even our network, if something is rated over a certain age range, we won't monetize it. So we have those safety rules in place, which is not necessarily the case in many other environments.
One thing is, it's a sort of odd thought popped into my head, but since I've got you here, I would love to actually try it on you and ask you, is music and sport very similar in terms of, I'm thinking maybe the genre's live aspect of it. We've got live sport, live music, concerts, performances, but also the sort of the close-knit community around artists, around sports. Is this similar at all?
Absolutely spot on. I think
Okay.
you get the. I mean, you're probably going to put me on a tangent here slightly, but it's relevant.
Love it. We love
But,
tangents
I
here.
mean, we've done a global survey about effectively fandom and so on like that, and you generally what we get from that is that music is always someone's passion point. It's like there is something for everybody. You don't like some music, but you absolutely love other music. With sports, of course, you've got this very passionate crowd following in that way. I think with music, though, it's slightly more universal. There are some people who don't like sports, if you know what I mean, who aren't as into sports at all and probably won't go out. Music in general, it's very, very hard to find someone who doesn't like music. So, but the people that are into it, and they are very loyal and follow certain artists or certain sports and so on like that. And it is within majority of surveys out there, not even just our own, the two top passion points are always music and sports. So, that's the fact. But yeah, it's and they're very interchangeable. And I think this is the tangent I was going to go on, is that music is often a theme of lots of things. In that, you get the World Cup will come this year. 3 Lions by Lightning Seeds will be playing, non-stop on kind of VEVO, and you'll get that happening. But you get that happen all the way through the year with certain events. We just see things happen during the year, and then music will just kick off. Like, I mean, the obvious one is always Mariah Carey at Christmas. Like, but
obviously,
exactly. So
this is how Christmas starts.
exactly that. But we get things like TikTok trends, or the theme of a series comes out, and then suddenly everyone wants to kind of engage in that song and find out a bit more. So it's a very interchangeable format that just kind of weaves through people's lives.
Well, it sounds like it's a match made in heaven. It's sports and music. So I guess the 2026, I think it'll be the year of partnerships, competition, collaboration, and mergers and acquisitions. So at least we know that this is like a perfect partnership met in heaven. Music amplifies, I guess, the drama in sport. Like it wasn't dramatic enough on its own. And I'm looking forward to the World Cup. There's always the sort of slight buzz around that time on the telly and outside of all the pubs in London. I'll miss that. But it is last question before we go sort of into a close, because advertising is still the primary revenue engine for a music video at really real meaningful scale. At least that's how I see it. But looking beyond standard ad breaks, what commercial formats or innovation in technology, and I specifically don't have any questions around AI, as you found, but especially when sport attracts so many different formats, different ways of engaging with fans. Now this the sort of similarities between the two genres. Do you envisage that music will get more interactive, shoppable? Name it. What are the things that are coming other than advertising?
I think I'm not going to speak on behalf of VEVO here. I mean, at the end of the day, we like we've discussed, we're in certain platforms. We are sort of beholden to the platform for the advertising we're offered in terms of those kind of formats. But I think there is always potential to kind of do those scenarios like shoppable and so on like that, or any kind of interactivity, second screening and so on like that might kind of associate with the ad. You've seen those kind of things happen, especially across Europe, the kind of L-shaped ads and so on like that. They're kind of there as well. So yes, I think there is. Yes, there will be. I'm not totally sure what it will be, but I think there's also there is also importance to think about what consumer experience is as well, because firing too much at them and kind of messing with the tried and tested
disruptive
scenario can be, a little bit, having worked at companies, even VEVO now or Sky in the past, where you've got to have that balance between editorial and kind of the commercial side of the business. And yes, one side will win over the other in certain scenarios, but consumer experience and consumers' experience with that content is your bread and butter. So it's really important to kind of have that in focus.
Yes, don't disrupt the attention, especially something as emotional and as music, ambient music. Lean back experience. No, that's very true. I would like to finish with a quick rapid fire.
Yeah, cool.
First instinct answers. I'm not going to hold you to one word answers because that never works with my guests.
Yeah.
And plus I expect a bit more now. So one thing about music video on TV that still surprises you after all those years.
Music video on TV?
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, I'm not sure it surprises me, but they're just the longevity. There are videos out there that just do not go away, and they will be used in many circumstances and so on like that. So there is, as I said earlier, there is always something for everybody in that environment.
Yeah, it's brilliant when your parents or our parents were obsessed with certain type of music or certain artists, then we became big fans. And now kids are still chanting to Freddie Mercury and David Bowie and all that. Yeah, love it. One area of the TV industry you are generally excited about going into 2026?
I think it is sort of this area, luckily. I think there is this kind of the collaboration has never been quite so open and exchangeable between publishers and broadcasters. We're all in rooms talking about what's the best way to serve advertisers as well as serve our own interests as publishers and broadcasters for the kind of greater good in a way. I've not experienced it quite to the same level as I had tail end of last year to this year, about really, trying to kind of maintain some of the and this is a really important point, actually, trying to kind of maintain what's good about TV. Because if we get to a world where, you're completely unregulated environment, any sort of quality of content, exists in this world, then actually it loses some of the power and gravitas that kind of, TV, had or has.
Yeah.
And I think that ability to kind of make it more accessible, make it easier to buy, and that's kind of some of the downfalls that have kind of beset the industry in recent time. Will only serve to kind of help its longevity moving forward. And I think it's really important that, again, not speaking just for VEVO, that nations kind of maintain this ability to kind of have high quality, trusted, reputable broadcasters within their remit to kind of serve the population and give them high quality localized content that they can relate to, and not in a world that we potentially could be in where you've got like lots of video made by anybody that could be anything and suddenly, but it's slightly high quality because AI is getting very good, but just having that ability to still have somewhere that everyone can go that's trusted and
well,
what are you going to get?
That's how historically I believe TV changed from this, all content for all. This was when the brands shaped TV broadcast into safer environments. So in some ways, advertising shaped the quality of TV as we know it today. So yes, it's a very good point. How are we going to do it when we are losing control over the environment and the platforms?
So, and I think the important thing is, sorry, I know this is quick fire, but the important bit there is really like that the content is still the core. It doesn't, because Channel 4 is on YouTube, doesn't mean it's suddenly not Channel 4.
Correct. Yeah.
So that kind of core thread of, we know where it came from, we know the source of it, it has some regulatory standards and something like that came with it. I know what I'm going to get if I buy this as an advertiser. The flip between advertising on this content is different to a viewing, because the viewing side is
that's very true. Yeah.
At the end of the day, if you like something, that's TV to you, that's cool. But if you're an advertiser and you want to ensure, brand safety and quality and something like that, then here is the place to go to start that journey. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's why there's discussion around whether YouTube is TV. It's like, well, for audiences it is. For media planner, maybe not yet.
Yeah.
But, well, it's the most important. Music just seems to find its way onto the TV screen, whatever changes around it. So yes. I'm happy with that. And Richard, thank you for your time and for such a thoughtful conversation. Thank you.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me.